Hello and welcome to I'm a Terrible Feminist. I'm David.
And I'm Theresa.
This month, as promised, we are talking about the HeforShe campaign. And if we're going to talk about the HeforShe campaign, we're talking about...
The place of men in feminism. Right? Oh no,
Emma Watson! I was like, I guess that too,
that
but
too. Yeah, but no.
Mainly Emma Watson. But during this episode, side notes you might hear in the background are the sounds of tea being drank and cats running into the door. So Emma Watson is the one who launched the HeforShe campaign at the UN with her speech on HeforShe, which is basically an open invitation for men to join the conversation on feminism and sort of a new label for those who maybe feel like something is other than feminism is needed.
It's kind of a middle ground in a lot of ways, because it's not saying... Men haven't ever been really excluded from this before, necessarily. But Emma Watson's new movement, HeforShe, is a new defining label to use to say, hey, I don't call myself a feminist, but I believe in equality.
And I'm an ally.
And I'm an ally. That we are united in this movement, even if we are not united by a word.
And the feminism in general, we defined this in our first episode, but it's basically about equality between men and women. Being treated equally, getting the same pay for the same work. Basic things like that. It's not really about man-hating.
Not about man-hating. It's not even not really about man-hating. It's not about man-hating.
That's true. And that's just a horrible, unfortunate association that is often... Like, there are some people who identify as feminists who do the man-hating bit.
It's like... But for those of you that want to use those feminists as an argument to say that feminism isn't... like it is about man-hating, think of it this way. There are the Christians that, you don't hear from, that practice Christianity and aren't the problem. And
then there's Timothy McVeigh.
I don't know who that is.
He's the Unabomber.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there are those people that, get in your face.
And the West Bureau Baptists.
That want to shove their religion down your throat. That, it's just, There's a queer resource center on my campus, and they host an event every year for a group of feminists who will not acknowledge trans women as women.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I do not think that they are a good example of what feminism really is.
Yeah.
Like, that's just...
I would agree with that.
If your feminism is excluding anyone, you're probably doing it wrong.
Most likely.
Yeah.
High probability. And so, speaking to that inclusion, men are pretty necessary in feminism because equality needs everyone to be involved. And it is about everyone. And I've been trying personally really hard to be better about not seeing gender as a binary and just seeing it as open. And so I know that we're saying men and women, but all people need to be a part of feminism, everyone in between.
I think the only reason we're saying men and women is because there's this big polarity
on
that. It's like, this is the difference. There are men and there are women, and that's what feminism is trying to break down.
Yeah, and
it's don't treat people differently. People are people.
Yes, agreed. One of the great things that Emma said in her speech was, can I do the voice?
Yeah, please do the voice.
It is time that we all perceive gender on a spectrum, not as two opposing sets of ideals. When I was really little and... Oh, there's a bug on my computer.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, God!
Where'd he go? I think he fell through the crack. Oh, I found him.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Sorry about that. There's a bug on my computer.
Every year my room is invaded by a tiny little force of box elder bugs. Google that shit. Anyway.
They have a proboscis.
Yep, they do.
Anyway, when I first saw Harry Potter, one of my favorite voices to do was Hermione's voice.
It's very articulate and smart.
It is. It's so good. And so I thought that was a really key thing, and that also speaks to the idea that we were just talking about, perceiving gender as something that is not two opposing sets of ideals. We had a response to this. We were very curious to see that there's a lot of people who didn't like Emma Watson's thing. Is it all right? Do you want to...
Yeah, can I talk about this?
Yeah, please.
You know how... If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that sometimes I'll open an episode with a rant.
Really?
Yeah,
noticed.
It's like there are these things in the community that upset me or something.
That make you angry.
This is the rant for this episode, guys. Buckle up.
Click.
So, a day after I watched Emma Watson's UN speech on HeforShe, I was on Twitter, doing our Twitter stuff, and
it's dead! It's a dead bug!
There, I got rid of it for you. Goodness. And, you know, this is a good example, actually, because, like, I'm dealing with the bugs for you, but this doesn't mean that I'm more masculine than you. It just means that I'm a person who is better with creepy crawlies.
I'm okay with them. It's just that they're on my stuff.
I'm just so used to them.
And I accidentally put my hand in that one.
Anyway, I was on our Twitter feed, doing our Twitter stuff. I came across a tweet from one of the Twitter accounts that I follow that sometimes I take stuff from and retweet from, and I was surprised because the tweet was just the title of this article that said, "Sorry, Emma Watson, HeforShe is shit for men."
Rotten for men.
Rotten for men. HeforShe is rotten for men. And it was by an author named Kathy Young, and I do not know how she managed to get this pile of drivel published in the Times?
Time magazine.
Time magazine. Because she couldn't have listened to the whole speech, even, with some of the things that she said. She said that it was only a focus on women, that Emma Watson invites men to participate in the conversation, but then doesn't address how.
Would you like me to read the quote?
Yeah, please read the quote.
Noting that all men suffer from sexism in their own ways, Watson asked, "How can we affect change in the world when only half of it is invited or feel welcome to participate in the conversation?"
And then Young goes on to say that Emma Watson doesn't even talk about how sexism harms men.
Even though she just mentioned how Watson said that sexism harms men.
And it's true that Emma gets into the particulars, like how suicide is one of the biggest killers of teenage young men in high school.
In the UK. Just men in the UK.
Just men in the UK. How her father isn't acknowledged as a parent as much as her mother is.
Yeah.
So many, do we have other examples written down?
We did not have any other examples
Those
written down.
Those are the two big examples that I remember.
I'd agree.
And she does this later in her speech, towards the last third.
Yeah.
I would say, actually. And I just don't think that Young
made it all the way through.
Made it that far. Which makes her article, in my opinion, a steaming pile of drivel.
Something I would like to compliment Watson on is her bringing up mental illness, because usually, regardless of gender, that sort of thing is ignored entirely. And it's a huge, serious thing that's going on in our society and our culture that people aren't treated effectively for.
She did a good job of being inclusive in her speech. I'm sure she read it over 1,000 times. I mean, Watson speaking to the UN, big deal.
Well, and they also, I remember people have talked about how she's very academically focused, and listening to the speech, I was just like, wow, like
she's smart.
If you read this out, you'd be like, this reads perfectly as a persuasive essay. It is so good. There's a call to action at the end. Everything is set. However...
Right, if not me, who, if not now, when? Moving, so powerful.
There were, like, in general, I agree with Theresa that Young's article just didn't really do it for me, but there were some things that frustrated me a bit about Watson's speech, which is the implication that men haven't been welcome to participate in the conversation, which they have been, and it's nice for her to extend an invitation to them and say, because now people can point and say, that was your moment where you could have come in.
I think partly, just a different perspective on that. I think what Watson's trying to do is kind of counteract the noisy ones that keep saying you can't call yourself a feminist. Like, David lives with...
my roommate, who is extremely supportive of women's rights and has worked for a sexual awareness center, giving advice, all sorts of things.
Danny is an ally, but has been told by too many women that he is not a woman and doesn't understand it, and therefore can't call him, like, they've asked them not to call himself a feminist.
I think it, honestly, for him, one would be enough. Not because he'd be like, oh, like, well, one woman said it, so now I just don't want to participate. But, like, if one person is uncomfortable with it, he would be like, no, like, whatever you want. Like, I'm still going to be an ally. I'm still going to support your equal rights. But whatever you want. And I feel bad. I think I got this from a Tumblr post that he posted. So he might think differently now. I don't know. I haven't asked him about it.
I like that Watson is saying, hey, you can call yourself a feminist. Like, that's okay, and I think that may be what she was trying to do with the invitation.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to realize that, like, whether you're calling yourself a feminist or an ally, it's all about respect.
Yeah, and I think the part where my frustration comes from is that it frustrates me that people who identify with my gender a lot of times are like, well, I don't want to be a feminist because, you know, it has, like, because they have all these misconceptions.
And not about men?
Yeah, because of the name. They think that it means that it has to be just women, and it really helps everyone. But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I think the reason that it's called feminism instead of, like, equalism is because we are focusing on the unequal party.
Yes.
Like, it's so that men can't hijack the movement and say, this is all about men's issues and how wronged we have been. And it's like, no, sexism affects you too, but this is not a male privilege movement. This is not make things better for men. This is make women equal.
And a lot of times with with sexism towards men, where like they're not allowed to feel, or
Yeah.
they're not allowed, like they're don't be a pussy, or whatever the negative thing is, it is because they're being told they're like women. The sexism that
Right.
hurts men is because women have been set up to be such a
It's
negative.
because women are unequal, and so making women equal will fix this.
Yeah.
As Watson says in her speech,
Yeah.
actually.
And so, yeah, in general, I agree with Watson's idea that even if everyone doesn't identify as a feminist, we are united in the philosophy that men and women are equal.
And the philosophy of equality.
Mm-hmm.
So, that raises the question, as a person who identifies as male, how can you help?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well,
I would like to listen.
you would like to listen?
I would like to listen to you tell me
how
something.
you can help me? Cough, cough, nudge, nudge. Hint, hint.
Ah, why are you nudging me
I'm
there?
not nudging you. I'm hinting to our listener that we may have just dropped how someone of the male persuasion can help by listening.
Oh!
Oh. See, we're so clever on this show.
Hilariously clever. A lot of times, men are socialized to interrupt women, to finish their sentence and use them as their own. We talked in an episode where we were discussing double standards at one point where Theresa was mentioning that you can say, that's what I just said. When a man repeats what you said, and everyone's like, what a great idea you had there, Johnson. And then someone can say, that's actually exactly the same words that I just used. And so people can listen and
validate experiences. I have a story on this one. So a few weeks ago, I had experienced another backlash to speaking up about feminism, being like, hey, what you said was just kind of, not awesome. It was a little sexist, it was a little derogatory, and here's why feminism is good for everyone. And I think I linked this young man to Watson's speech, actually. I was like, here, educate thyself.
yeah, read up.
And instead of, taking me seriously and matching my seriousness, this young man who, granted, is a little awkward and likes to make jokes, decided to be sarcastic and rude to me instead of, having a thoughtful response and being like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Just kind of, acknowledging that what he'd done might have been wrong. Not that he was a terrible person, but that, his phrasing might have been problematic.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I screen capped this. Someday, when I'm better at image editing, we'll go over this.
When you discover paint. Sweet paint.
When I get better at it. Anyway, I got rather upset because I consider this young man a colleague. He's in my graduate program and a friend. And to be talked to in that manner when I was being serious about something that mattered to me was hurtful.
Yeah.
And this was the second time I had a backlash of that sort from a friend. And so I wasn't happy, and I came home to my father to rant and to be listened to and to have my experiences validated. What I wanted was, wow, that sucks. He shouldn't have talked to you that way. I'm sorry you've had to put up with this. Yeah, men shouldn't treat women like that. Like, I wanted my experience validated, and I wanted it from my father because I wanted another man to tell me that what this man had done to me wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Because these responses of, hey, you, like, stop talking about this, and, like, I'm gonna make fun of you for talking about this, made it hard for me to trust men a little bit.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't feel comfortable talking to men about this because of the ridicule and angry backlash that I receive.
Yeah.
So I wanted another man to be, kind about it. Instead, my father told me that I was the problem, that if I didn't like what was happening, that I shouldn't talk about it. Which to me is like another silencing technique. And I actually went off on my father and I said, actually, Dad, I don't think it's me that's the problem. I think it's this social idea that we have brainwashed our young men with, this conditioning that is inherent in our culture that says, hey, if a woman says something to you that you don't like, it's okay to make fun of her.
Yeah.
That if you are uninformed about something, it's okay to get angry because you don't have to take her seriously anyway. Whereas if it was another man, that,
You might have acted differently.
Might have not thought
Probably
that
would
was
have
so
acted
acceptable.
differently. Yeah.
So that's the first thing my father said to me. And then when I continued to be like, Dad, I don't think that's the case, and like, I don't think this is okay, he started making excuses for why these men were doing it. Like trying to explain away their behavior. Of like, well, maybe they were feeling this way, or maybe like they weren't taking it as seriously as you were. And I was like, I don't care.
Maybe they didn't have breakfast that morning. I get hangry like no other.
It doesn't really matter to me why it happened. It just, it still wasn't okay. It was like making an excuse for it.
Yeah.
And in order to communicate with my father about this, I had to use the phrases, not all men, and I'm sorry. Which were not things I wanted to do. I just wanted to be listened to and supported.
Yeah.
That's what I needed right then. And I mean, it was my father. If a father can't do that for his daughter, like, it's... I didn't like being told I was the problem. I didn't like being told that my experience wasn't valid and that it was a one-off instead of the norm. Even though I have continued to experience this sort of thing since then, even. Since then, I've had two more experiences of backlash, which we can get into later.
Yes.
So by listening and validating, like, do not explain away the behavior. Don't try to justify it. Don't try and tell the woman who is telling you what has happened to her that she's the problem and she needs to change her behavior. Support her.
Yeah,
say,
give support.
That was wrong, and I'm sorry it happened to you.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to know why it happened. We don't care why it happened. We need someone to acknowledge that it was wrong.
Yeah, there needs to be a recognition of that inequality, which is our next thing. That
is our next point. Nice segue.
Thanks. And a lot of times in this nature, where like two people have a conversation, like a man and a woman will have a conversation, and the man will say something that's offensive, and then it goes to another man, and the man says, well, you know, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? A lot of times, well, like, they'll make excuses.
Oh, like my father did.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of forms of sexist behavior are invisible to other men because men will behave differently with a woman when a man is around.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that can be done just by calling out general sexist behavior, even though when it's men and women, it tends to be more subtle. Like, it's not necessarily catcalling, but it's like someone is being silenced in a meeting, or like someone says something, and you say, oh, like, I think that's a great point that Theresa has already said.
I think Theresa said that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that... Just you know, you don't have to be confrontational about these things, but just, like, acknowledging women and, like, including them.
Yeah.
And I think spinning off of this point, part of acknowledging the inequality is acknowledging that you might not know everything about, like, what a woman goes through every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am not catcalled when I walk down the street with David.
Nope.
I'm not, because I'm with
event.
a man, and therefore from a male perspective of someone who might catcall me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying from the male perspective, but like from a male perspective of a man who would catcall me.
Mm-hmm.
If I was walking along the street by myself,
mm-hmm.
I'm already controlled. There's already a man there that's like doing that for him, that is controlling me and like probably sexualizing me in his head anyway. I have had men say that they don't believe that women get catcalled, and that's just because they don't see it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not with a woman, you don't know what's going on in her life.
Mm-hmm.
She's not jumping to conclusions. She's not making it up.
Yeah.
It's actually happened to her. And to tell her that she's probably overreacting or that it doesn't happen that often, you, as a male, don't understand what it's like to live in this world and be perceived and judged and interacted with that female thing. Like, I mean, unless you've cross-dressed and passed for a woman and had that interaction in public.
I never did it that well.
I know. Although you did look great in that video that you did with Sarah.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Anyway. And so when you do these things and you call it these inequalities and you recognize and validate them, that those tiny things are huge steps.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's true that
and
change
they mean a lot.
Yeah, and change can be rallies and it can be protests, but it can also be these
The
small
battles.
things. And like, you know, even calling out like we have a note here of Theresa saying, dude, the way you talk about your girlfriend objectifies her. Like, that's a great thing to bring up with people if you notice that that's happening.
And you'll notice that the phrasing has to do with the behavior, not the person.
Yeah.
My dad is frustrating me right now, so like I'm probably going to tell more stories about him than usual. And this is not about like if you sense a lot of aggression or anger in my voice, it's because I'm upset with my father, not necessarily because I'm upset with men.
Yeah.
Just, you know, a disclaimer. But he's still my dad.
Yeah.
And I love him. It's just that I need to address some things with him about his behavior lately and how it's made me feel.
Yeah.
And this comment, hey, dude, the way you talk about your girlfriend objectifies her. Which, you know, could you change your phrasing?
Yeah.
Could you not do that? Because it's about the behavior. It's not about...
the person.
It's not... This world is not made up of good people and bad people. We don't have that binary. Good people do bad things. And the bad things are the problem.
Yeah. Just watch Lost.
Then there are bad people, and I just don't even know what to do with those. But, you know, I think a dollop of understanding can go a long way.
I would agree. And one of the ways that I personally try to do this is is by having people stop and explain their sexist comments. Like, I have one coworker, and he's a really great guy. This happens very, very rarely, and I always feel kind of shitty about doing it, because, like, it's always so small. Like, there was one time, one of our coworkers was leaving, and I was like, oh, well, like, it might be fun to hang out. Like, do you want to trade numbers really quick? And she was like, sure, yeah. And so we traded numbers, and she walked off, and this guy came and was like, dude, nicely done. And I was like, we're friends. And he's like, but like, I wanted to get her number. I'm like, well, she's still there, go ask her. And it's like, no, but like, you know. I'm like, no. I don't. And he was like, never mind, and he just walked away. Like, it's those little things that, like, be like, look, like, when you say these things, it sounds so stupid, without telling someone that they're stupid, because obviously that's not a terribly nice thing to do, and that shuts a door.
It does, and it's a judgment on the person, not the behavior.
Another fun thing, the place that I work is pretty great. Like, I would like to emphasize this right now. No, I would like to talk about it. I just want to mention that it's pretty great, and that a lot of the problems, like the one I'm going to mention, are handled quickly and efficiently. And so, which is one of the reasons I like working there. There is a customer who has been coming in and harassing the cafe workers and telling them things like, stand up straight so we can, you know, see what you got. And, like, showing them pictures of naked women and reading them inappropriate poetry. And one person who actually went to another place, he was confronted and talked to by the owner, because we handle this shit.
Yeah.
And he thought, maybe correctly, maybe incorrectly, that this person who had gone to a different job was one of the stories they were using, and he went and asked her about it at her new place of work. I'm like, that shit is fucked up and creepy and stalkerish and not okay. And so I'm pretty sure he's going to be kicked out very, very promptly, which I'm very glad about. And, like, those things are important, to be like, look, you know, it doesn't matter if you're paying me something right now. Like, the customer can't always be right. Especially when you're going to objectify people who work here, because not only are you going to make them uncomfortable, but without a doubt, the customers are going to be uncomfortable because they're hearing this.
It's actually probably worth more money to get rid of customers that make a lot of the customer service staff feel uncomfortable, because good luck giving out good customer service if you feel threatened.
Yeah, definitely. And so now I hear a scream in the distance.
Oh no, that's rain on the roof.
No. It is the scream of many young men who are shouting something. What is it?
Not all men!
Oh, I think I heard it. Let's talk a little bit about this. I read this great analogy on Tumblr, because Tumblr has so many great analogies. This one was a prison analogy, and trigger warning rape. It talks about, like, when you go to prison, like, if I went to prison personally, I would know that there are people in the prison who might rape me. There are scary people, and there are people who I am going to be afraid of. And
just as a little disclaimer, I'm not sure if we have any international listeners or not, but, like, in the United States, prisons are not co-ed.
Yeah. Are they internationally?
I don't know if they are.
Oh, okay.
I just, but if David went to prison, he would be going to an all-male prison. If I went to prison, I'd be going to an all-female prison.
Yes. Anyway, so I wouldn't know who was going to rape me, and I wouldn't know who was not going to do that. But I would still be a fucking afraid of everybody in that prison. Like, I don't know if it's going to be my bunkmate. I don't know if it's going to be one of the guards. I don't know anything. Like, I am just completely alone. And I'm going to act like it. I'm going to be on my game all the time. And in this analogy at this point, in the analogy, it's a woman talking to one of her male friends, and she says, this is how women have to be on guard all the time. Because you never know who's going to be the safe person and who's not going to be the safe person, because you can't tell.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And so, well, sure, when you say men should stop raping, it's because the majority of rapists are men.
Yeah, the majority of rapists, I think, statistically speaking, if we're wrong on these numbers, let us know, but I'm pretty sure that's a safe thing to say.
I'm positive.
Yeah. I had a friend who was having trouble with this whole me having so many safety precautions in place when I went on a date. He was like, that just seems paranoid. Like, you text how many of your friends to call you at differing intervals. You tell them all where you're going to be and your game plan. Why do you think you need to be so, like what a judgment on the person you're going out with? And I went, is it really, though? It's like I'm trying to date men and bears at the same time and can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm going out on a date with a bear, and if something bad happens to me, I want to be saved!
Yeah. You want people to know where you are and be able to come get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with the cries of not all men, I understand that it's tough not to be defensive when people are talking, and it's like, men need to stop doing this, men need to stop doing this. But if you stop and think and figure out why what's being said has stirred some sort of feeling of defensiveness inside of you. Respond to what's causing that feeling. Like, say, man, like, it really hurts my feelings because I feel like I'm being lumped in this category full of people, and I don't feel like I belong in that category. And the best way to show that is through actions, is to listen, is to validate.
The reason women say men when they're talking about the worst presentation of them is because that's the visible. That's the visible thing. That's what we experience daily. We experience the catcalls, experience the judgments. Like, it's kind of like how feminists are judged by the worst quality of feminists. Women are saying men because they're talking about the worst quality of men, and they're judging them because that's the visible one. If you as a man no longer want that to be what women mean when they say men, make yourself visible and positive. Yeah,
that change can start with you.
Speaking of that defense, going back to that defensiveness, as I mentioned earlier, there have been a few times when I've spoken up and been ridiculed. One of the first ones that I remember is a friend of mine. I will call him Mr. T, even though that is not...
Does he wear a gold chain?
No!
That's too bad.
And he told me that if I wanted to be taken seriously, like me as a feminist, if feminism wanted to be taken seriously, that I needed to call myself an equalist. Because feminism excluded men entirely. And I was like, that is not what... And I had explained to him what feminism meant, how it was good for men, etc. And he was like, I know, why are you repeating yourself? And then attacked me directly with, if you want to be taken seriously. As if he had some sort of right to judge whether I should be taken seriously or not. The next one was Mr. M, in which I explained to him how his comment had been a little sexist. He had equated crazy men's rights activists to feminists.
Yeah.
And then said that feminists reminded him of the crazy hobos that tossed cans off the overpass down into the freeway. And then told me not to be a crazy hobo. This, I think, may have been an attempt at humor. It's difficult to read in text, especially without emoticons. Like, this was an online thing. To which I took it as a joke originally. I was like, sorry, I'm gonna have to be a crazy hobo, and then explained why what he had said had upset me, and then why feminism was something that he shouldn't come down on because it was good for everyone, and linked him to Emma Watson's
HeforShe.
Yeah. And his response to me was, wow, that was a hell of a response. I forgive you. Which my response was, what? Forgive me for what? And I chose to take him seriously. I was like, wait, I'm sorry. Forgive me for what? And then I think it was either his sister or his mother. I couldn't tell name-wise, but they had the same last name as him.
Yeah.
Went, hot trolled! And then he had a response about, no, come on, I'm being completely serious here, guys, da-da-da-da. And I was like, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not at this point. I feel...
And it gets difficult to tell, who is being talked to, and...
Exactly, and it's very difficult with that. Another example, I've had a few more since this, unfortunately. One was about the video that went viral of the woman walking through New York and getting catcalled. I had posted this on my Facebook, and a friend of mine had given me a parody video about a man walking through New York. And at first I was like, what the fuck are you trying to say? That, men get catcalled too and this isn't an issue? Although it was obviously staged.
Yeah.
Obviously. And actually it turned out to be a parody about privilege.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was because at the end he was sitting in a chair, people were carrying him, and he had a crown and a scepter and the cloak thing that kings have, and everyone was going was chanting something. I forget, something positive.
Yeah.
Oh, King of New York or something.
Yeah.
And at the end, the disclaimer was 100,000 instances of privilege occurred. I was like, this is actually really funny.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it was good. However, this friend and I got into it because he went, wait a second, is it okay for me to think about myself as privileged? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, you're male. You have a privilege, and it's good of you to acknowledge it. And he was like, that just sets me up to be so pompous and arrogant and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, I really don't understand what you mean. To acknowledge that you have a privilege because of the way society perceives you is something that has nothing to do with you, even.
Well, and it doesn't mean that you have to abuse that privilege.
No, it doesn't mean that you have to abuse that privilege. In fact, being aware of it, I think, is a duty, almost. I am privileged because I am perceived as white. in my head I'm not. I'm Greek, but that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's the European white, and the olive isn't super pronounced in my skin unless I'm tan, actually. And living in the Pacific Northwest,
you don't get tan.
I don't really get tan. But I acknowledge that I have a privilege as a white girl, just because of my skin color, because of the way that society perceives me, and the privilege that I enjoy because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean being aware of that doesn't make me a terrible person.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes me aware of a difference. And I actually had an instance in which this happened to me. I work with a black young man at my job right now.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, he and I got into a discussion about our pasts.
Mm-hmm.
And his life has been so much harder than mine.
Yeah.
So much harder than mine. And when he was talking about it, I got quiet because I was feeling something that I didn't really understand. That was defensiveness, actually. I wanted to say, yeah, his life has been so hard, but I'm not a terrible person for, enjoying these things, and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Not all white people.
Yeah, not all white people, and instead of saying that, or,
Good
coming
choice.
down on him, because I'm a very talkative person usually, but I noticed that something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that it's more okay, societally speaking, thanks to our brainwashing, for women to examine their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
To connect with them and examine them and talk about them. But I got very quiet in this conversation with this young man because I knew that if I said something stupid, I would regret it.
Yeah.
That I didn't want to hurt this young man by being an idiot.
Yes.
By not taking the time to process what I was feeling and to understand it before saying anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually later, after this conversation had ended, I came to him later and I said, when we were talking earlier, I'm sorry I was so quiet. I was realizing that I have had it a lot better than you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not actually the phrasing that I said, because to say, my life has been so much better than yours, that's totally rude. And I think that may have been, what my friend online had been getting at.
Yeah.
That, to say that I am privileged is so arrogant and rude to a lot of people. And I agree, in that sort of phrasing, it would have been.
Yeah.
I forget my exact phrasing, so it's going to sound problematic.
Yeah, I think you gave it enough of a...
Yeah, but I acknowledged it to him, that I had felt that way. That I had gotten a little defensive of my lifestyle and, emotionally, and that I wanted to say, thank you for sharing his experiences with me. That's, because I wanted him to feel good about it, because I wanted him to do it more.
Yeah.
Because there was actually a law in Oregon for, all the way through, I think, the 60s, that prevented people of color from moving here.
What?
Which is why Oregon is so undiverse.
Oh.
Yeah, it's bad.
Great.
I know.
I'm going north again.
Things I learned about my state that make me ashamed. But, I hadn't had that experience before, and I was grateful to have had it because it broadened my horizons.
Yeah.
It made me a more educated person, which is part of why this podcast is called I'm a Terrible Feminist. We're all in progress.
Yeah, we don't know everything, and that's okay.
We don't, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm. And so it's great that Theresa could recognize that defensiveness and be able to subvert it.
And be a visible, positive influence.
Yeah, and try. Yeah, and aim for that. And that is something that we should all be trying to do with feminism as well. And it's something that can be done in talking to men about behaviors and phrases that are sexist and that put down women and that put women in a lesser light. That is the way that we can do it. And like Emma Watson says, if not me, who? If not now, when? Any time is a good time to start this. Start it now. Keep going. It's going to take a lot of effort, and like Theresa says, there is backlash. I bring this up, and it becomes a problem. One of the examples I had recently about policing something is I was at a birthday party with my significant other, and we were sharing an ice cream cone, and and I was trying to find the ideal place to hold the cone so she could take it at will and have some.
Yeah.
Because I was eating more of it than she was, because she didn't really want some, but she wanted a little bit. And I was telling her this because I kept moving the cone, and she was like, "Why do you keep moving the cone?" And the guy who was dating the birthday girl was like, "Well, you could keep it next to that other cone that she wants to eat." And I was like, I don't have any other cones on me, actually. I'm not sure what you're referring to. She's like, "Well, the one that she could grab, right?" I'm like, I'm a little lost. I don't get it. And the birthday person, bless their soul, knew exactly what I was doing, but they kind of have a thing for this guy.
Because you played dumb.
Because I played, and I don't know, I feel like some people don't get my troll face, and some people understand it way too well. And so they immediately keyed in, and I was like, David, he's talking about your junk. I was like, I didn't bring any junk with me either. No, because I didn't want, like, this, like, it's my birthday, shut up and stop, like, promoting feminism at my party. Like, I don't want to do that now. I don't want that stressful conversation here. Like, I just want to have fun and ignore the world. Which, you know, I can appreciate you want to do that at your birthday.
Off too.
It's hard.
I try, actually. It's super hard.
It's very difficult.
For me.
And so he looks at me and he's like, you can take that off? I look at him like, it's a master level thing, bro. And then he just, like, kind of had a confused look on his face, and that was the end of the conversation. And maybe it was, like, I don't know what I could have said that would have been better, besides being like, you know, actually this is, you know, someone who I respect a lot, and my relationship with him is just not about what they can do to my penis.
Yeah.
It's, like this is me trying to find a way to share things with them, and you're trying to turn it into a way of, like, them just satisfying me sexually all the time, which I thought was bullshit.
I agree. And David's example here is a fantastic way of, like, how you can do this without being confrontational.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm a very confrontational person. I am. So I would have been like, actually, our relationship isn't always about sex. Mm-hmm. Like, that would have been how I handled that.
Yeah. I think that would have been a pretty good way.
Well, it means that I get a lot more backlash. Like, mm-hmm. I incite a lot more conflict because I'm very upfront about things. Mm-hmm. And if that's the way that you want to do things, please, by all means, I condone this behavior so heavily. But I interviewed another friend of mine who actually doesn't consider himself a feminist either. Mm-hmm. A lot of men that I've talked to don't. And part of it is because they've been told by women that it would make them more comfortable if they didn't say that. Part of it is because of the way that my father and this friend define feminist as, like, an activist who, like, goes out and pickets and does things, or
makes podcasts.
Yeah, things like that. Like that. But I interviewed this friend recently who doesn't consider himself a feminist, but believes in the equality of men and women. And actually, when I told him about Emma Watson's HeforShe, he was like, that's awesome. I'm going to start using this to refer to myself. Because he is an ally. Mm-hmm. He is, but he's uncomfortable with the word, and I'm so appreciative of this new, like, not gray area, but middle ground.
Yeah.
That just promotes the unity over equality. Uh-huh. But anyway, I asked him about this issue.
Mm-hmm. Policing.
About policing. And he said, you know, I probably wouldn't say anything. I would probably go, really? To someone that I knew really well. Uh-huh. I would probably walk away, stop conversing, give a disgusted look to a stranger. Mm-hmm. Like, he has all of these little ways to say, I don't like what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. To not approve.
To disapprove. And you don't have to be confrontational. You don't have to use words to do this. I think it's more helpful if you do.
Yeah.
Because I think it sends a louder message.
Agreed.
I think it is more memorable and allows the person who you are policing to understand exactly what you are policing. Exactly what you have a problem with. Exactly what they should change about their behavior. But if you don't feel up to it, if you can't, there are ways to do it non-verbally.
Yes.
There are ways to do it without confronting them. Subtly. You can play dumb.
Yeah.
Or you can come right out and yell at them, like me.
Whichever.
Yeah, but I think it is important to condemn the behavior, not the person.
We've been telling a lot of stories about very negative examples, and I have a very positive example that I like.
I'd love to hear. We don't do that.
We don't do enough of them. I had a great moment where I was just where I like realized that this person who I work with is cooler than I realized, and I already thought he was pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
So the store that I work at has gone through an expansion. It's very exciting, and we had to pull an overnight work party, which is pretty fun. And it was actually the night before my birthday, and like. Would have gone on to my birthday if it had gone that long. It actually took less time than we thought. But, like, they brought me out, like, a cake. Aww. And it was super sweet. And, like, all my coworkers sang to me. So just so you know, creepy guys get kicked out. Employees are treated pretty well. Uh-huh. Good place to work.
Yeah.
Anyway, so while doing this overnight work party, at 9:30, this guy's alarm on his phone starts going off. And he says, guys, it's 9:30. And he just goes back to work. And I go up to him like, what the hell was that? Like, what just happened? He's like, oh, it's for birth control. I was like, is that shot out now? Like, what am I missing? He's like, no, like, it's so that I can remind my girlfriend, like just because it isn't my body doesn't mean it's not my responsibility. And I thought that was like the coolest thing you could say is just because it isn't men who are receiving the brunt of these sexist actions doesn't mean it's not our responsibility to change it, which I thought was super cool.
No, I like this example. This makes me smile.
He's great. He is great. Another nice example. Do you want to do Guante's poem? Because it's Guante.
Yes! Okay, so there's this poet. I think we have posted one of his things before.
I think we posted this one.
We did. We posted this one as well.
Oh.
I believe that when we were first starting out, I threw one of his poems up, actually, because I remember him, like, retweeting it on Twitter, and he'd be like, he noticed us! Senpai, oh my gosh, Senpai noticed me! No.
Oh, Lord. I'm leaving that.
Goodness gracious. So this poem is called Action, and I think I for some reason I have like this weird like subtitle in my head that is the terrible truth about when men are silent.
That sounds like a good summary of it.
Yeah, it is a good summary. And in this poem, he talks about all of those silences between himself and other men in his life that were conversations not had about how your girlfriend doesn't sound safe with you because of the way you talk about what you're going to do to her. About how his friend said she never said no, and about how her silence will always mean no. About how his silence as his friend will always mean yes. It will always be condoning it. If you don't say that you don't condone something,
it's a tacit approval.
It's a tacit approval. And I loved it. I loved this poem.
It was very powerful.
The other line that really got to me was how rape culture is about how we tell our daughters to not dress provocatively and not to walk alone at night, and we tell our sons nothing. He didn't even say the word nothing. It was just a moment of silence to, like, greater illustrate his point. It was so poetic. Go listen to this poem, guys. It's amazing.
Guante is spelled Guante, and the poem is called Action.
Exactly. Go listen to it. It's amazing. But it got to me in a way that I don't think this poem from a woman would have. Because this is a male perspective that says this is not okay.
Yeah, it's a call to action from a male perspective, which we need more of.
I think there's only so much that I can do as a woman, because there are the men out there who want to say not all men to me, who want to explain away and justify the behavior that is done to me, that don't take me seriously because I'm a woman, and society has told them not to take me seriously. I need your help to get people to take me seriously, guys. I need it. I do. Like, this is about everyone, and the minute that I am seen as an equal to all other men, not just me, not like, this is not Theresa-ism.
Let's make it Theresa-ism. That sounds great.
But
that was a
when
joke.
women are seen as equal to men, when you throw like a girl isn't an insult, when all right, ladies isn't an insult, it will be better for everyone. You'll be able to take that feeling of defensiveness and examine it in a few minutes like I was able to, instead of having to take days to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
Why you don't feel okay. Why you want to yell at the person that made you feel uncomfortable, instead of understanding what's going on inside of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want everyone to be happy, guys. I just want to not have to defend myself every single day. I want to be able to walk around without feeling like I have to be on the like on the lookout for rapists around every corner. I want to feel safe.
Yeah.
I want to feel taken seriously. I want to feel like if I say something, there isn't a 50% chance that I'm going to get shut down and told to shut up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what HeforShe and feminism is about. I don't care if you want to call yourself a feminist or if you want to call yourself an ally.
But it's the philosophy that men and women should be treated equally, and that this bullshit going on with sexism in women needs to stop.
It's terrible for everyone. It's horrific, and it does terrible things to everyone.
Yep. HeforShe is a wonderful thing, because it is this middle ground, as Theresa said. And Theresa is right about how HeforShe is this great middle ground where people who maybe don't identify as feminists but want to be allies can meet with people who are feminists, and they can talk. And it's really important this space is created.
Because I personally have felt scared when a man that I know tells me he's not a feminist, because then he's part of this big group, the group that is men and bears, and I suddenly don't know if he's one of the bears again.
Yeah.
Because to me the word feminist means that they support me, that they do believe in equality, and that is a good word for me to hear. It makes me feel supported. However, after talking to my father and my friend Ian, and hearing their reasons for not wanting to call themselves feminists, and even hearing about Danny and his reason for not wanting to call himself a feminist, which is because a woman asked him not to, I think that this HeforShe movement will allow them a label that they can use to say, hey, I support you.
Yeah, they'll still give it there. And Theresa's right that there's a lot of fear that goes into things, and there's a lot of pent-up frustration that women go through because of the way that they're treated by men a lot of the time.
By the visible, unfortunate part of the male gender.
And it's really tough for some feminists to not just
shut all men.
Yeah, and to just shut people down and ridicule them when they don't want to identify as a feminist. And so, to the feminists out there, please try to be patient with the people who are willing to listen. And to the people who are willing to listen, please don't get pushed away if initially it's hard. And think about that defensiveness that comes inside of you.
Yeah, good example. Some weeks are rougher than others. About 2 weeks ago, I had a really, really rough week in this sense. I got catcalled a lot. I got shut down in class. I was ridiculed online when talking to people that I trusted. Like, it was just a really terrible week. And then a friend of mine asked me about it, a male friend, and we were talking about feminism, and I just went off on him.
Yeah.
I went off on him because it had been a terrible week, and I was tired of having to defend myself and stand up for myself, and essentially say that I had a right to be where I was, to be in school and have an opinion, to say something that I wanted to say, that I didn't need to defend my right to say, I don't like what you're saying. I don't have to know you or justify anything to say that I don't like what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry that you feel judged because what you said didn't come off well. I'm not judging you. I'm saying I didn't like what you said. And my friend took a step back and said, do you need me to buy you a drink?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's exactly what happened. And I was like, yes! That's exactly what I need. And then after the drink and some water and some food, I calmed down and I apologized. I was like, I'm sorry I went off on you. It's just been a rough week. And he was like, I could tell.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. He did a good job. I mean, it's Ian.
Oh, okay. There
Again,
we go.
it's Ian. Ian knows me well. He's a great guy.
He's good for drinks.
He is good for drinks, and he knows classic cocktails, which is kind of my thing. So, like, he even ordered it. He was like, I know that you don't want to make decisions right now because you're upset, not because you're a woman. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, he was all over it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
But, like, I know that women can get really upset about it, but realize they're dealing with a lot. Like, be understanding, and, you know, I try. It doesn't happen very often. I realize that not all men are the problem. But sometimes
the screaming crowds are sated.
Sometimes it just feels that way.
Yeah.
Like with the amount of bullshit that I have to put up with, sometimes it just feels that way. And sometimes all we need is just a little bit of kindness to break us out of that.
And it's funny that, like, it's funny to me that there are so few men who identify as feminists. And, like, when I was writing down here to record this, I rode next to this wonderful woman from Alabama, and we're talking. She asks why I'm going down to Oregon. I'm like, oh, well, you know, I'm doing a podcast with a friend that she's asked me to do. And I always have to bring Theresa into it, because if I say, oh, you know, I do a podcast on feminism, people are like, oh, fuck, a crazy man. Like, and she,
you know, I do the same thing, because I'm always like, I have a male voice on my podcast. I'm not a man hater.
And I'm always like, I was invited by a woman to speak about feminism. I am not just some crazy man being like, this is how women should be. And she was like, that's so cool that you're, like, I've never met a man who's a feminist. And she was like 28. And I was like, how did that happen? She was like, Alabama. And she was like, but it's not everyone, not all Alabamians.
Alabamians? Is that what they're called?
I think so.
Oh my gosh.
Suddenly you want to live in Alabama.
Yeah? No.
Oh no, Alabamians. Sorry.
Alabamians.
Albanians are from Albania.
Okay. All right, there we go.
My bad.
Like, hang on.
And she, you know, we had that little talk how she's like, you know, sometimes I don't want to say I'm a feminist because I don't want to shut that door and make people think I'm going to go off on them. And I'm like, you know, I understand. And have you heard of HeforShe? And she was like, I think I did. And I was like, it's a great middle ground place.
It's great.
And
Everyone can be happy here.
Yeah. And so there are so many different ways to help. There are so many different ways to be an ally. And please come and join this little happy kumbaya circle.
And if you think of any more ways, like something that you've seen
let us know.
Please let us know, because we'd love to employ them and share them with our other listeners.
Absolutely. Speaking of things we're going to share with our listeners, are we good to say what the next episode is?
So next month, the reason I interviewed Ian about feminism is because he's a gay man. And next month we are going to be talking about feminism in the LGBTQIA community. We're going to be referring it to as the GSM community in that, because the acronym has gotten so long and I don't want to leave out any letters, which is the Gender and Sexual Minorities.
Oh.
That's what GSM stands for.
Cool.
And the acronym is much smaller, and I feel a little more inclusive because I just don't want to leave out any letters.
There are a lot of letters.
There are a lot of letters, and I would say them every single time just for you if I felt that all those letters were inclusive. But as my other guest, the person that I will actually be co-hosting this with next time.
Wait, what? I'm kidding. It's a joke.
David and I talked about this. Christmas is a time that's hard.
I'm not gonna... it'll just be Theresa and some other person I don't know.
His name is Nathan, and he is a transgendered man and a person that I also went to college with during my undergraduate time. So Nathan and I will actually be the ones talking, but I have an interview from Ian and an old boss of mine. Actually, she's a current boss of mine. I still work for her a little bit, but she's a lesbian. She's offered us some of her perspective. And some other, like, we're going to try and cover it from every perspective, from all of the letters of the LGBTQIA. And we're also going to include pansexuality, just because Nathan identifies that way as well. So he has a perspective on that. That's all we're going to be covering in that podcast. However, we're going to be asking for a big dialogue on this one. Because we understand that really we only have a bisexual, because I'm bisexual, that I'm representing the B. We've got the G and the L from interviews, and then we've got the trans from Nathan and the pan. But we understand that we don't actually have
intersex, asexual,
a questioning, an intersex, and asexual person. Like, I know my littlest sister identifies as asexual, but she didn't really want to talk about it so much. So, like, although I have a little bit of experience, and we did read an article, but we realized that we don't have personal experience with every one of these perspectives. So if you as a listener have a personal experience that you want to send to us before or after or during the podcast for the feminism and LGBTQIA community, I'm just going to start saying GSM. Please, by all means, we're excited about doing this.
Have a great month.
Yeah,
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, eat lots of yummy things.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
See you next time.